Hi guys, we're back with the final chapter of We All Fall Down by Eric Walters. We're on our final chapter, chapter 15, so here we go. I turned and started to run when all at once I was picked up and thrown, sailing through the air. I skittered onto the pavement, but my face crashed into the concrete. My head and my back and my legs were stung by the bite of something smashing into them. I tried to pull my arms over my head, and I was engulfed in a thick white cloud of dust, stinging my eyes, choking my lungs as my ears were flooded with sounds so intense it felt as though my eardrums might burst. The sounds went on and on and on, and then it all just stopped. I struggled to get to my feet, but I couldn't, and I fell back down to my knees. I tried to draw in a breath, but it was as if I were lying face first in sand. The harder I tried, the more dust that was drawn into my lungs. I felt as if I were drowning in the air. I pushed off with my hands and I staggered to my feet. I tried to see through the cloud, tried to understand what had happened. What was happening? I coughed violently, trying desperately to expel dust and gather air into my lungs. I looked back and I peered through the cloud. It was so thick that I couldn't even see the building. I tripped over something and I smashed back down to the ground. My ears became filled with the sound of sirens, as thick in my ears as the dust was in my throat. I knew something had fallen, maybe the entire top of the building, sending up the cloud of swirling, choking, blinding dust, so thick that it blocked everything from my view. I couldn't even see the tower. Maybe I wasn't even looking in the right direction anymore. I hardly knew which way was down. I tried to look up to see the sky, but all I could make out was a sort of brightness in the white cloud where the sun was trying to force its way through. I staggered a few feet in one direction and then in the other, but going nowhere. Where was there to go? Which direction should I head? I tripped and I fell down again. What had I tripped over? It was a gigantic piece of concrete. If that had hit me, I would have been crushed. My head would have been broken into little pieces. Killed. I scrambled forward on all fours. Through the haze, I could see that the ground was littered with pieces of concrete, hunks of metal, broken and shattered shards of glass. I looked down at my hands. They were white and red. The palms of both hands were cut and bleeding, the left much worse than the right. It was bleeding badly. Blood was flowing out of the large, ugly gash that extended up from my hand to my elbow. My shirt was shredded and torn. I held up my arm slowly and turned it around, looking at the cut, watching the blood dripping out of it. It didn't hurt. There was no feeling. It was just numb, like I felt. This was unreal, like a dream, a nightmare. The white cloud was streaking with bursts of red and yellow, pulsating, flashing lights from the roof of the emergency vehicles. The lights met and passed and parted and joined. They were coming from all over, creating a strange, bizarre light show. I became aware of people all around me, running, screaming. They looked more like ghosts, faces and clothes covered with thick, white powder. I struggled to my feet again. My knees were shaking, not sure if I could even walk, if I did know which way to go. Suddenly, I was hit from behind and knocked off my feet. "I'm so sorry," a man yelled. He grabbed my arm and he helped me up. It was a police officer. He was covered from head to toe in dust. His hat was missing. His eyes were wide open. Dark holes were staring out at me from a blanket of white. He looked terrified. You gotta move anyways," he screamed. "Get away. I have to wait here for my dad." "Your dad? Where's your dad?" "He's in the lobby." "The lobby? The lobby of what?" "The South Tower." He seemed to recoil in shock. "Oh, son, I'm so sorry. So sorry." "So sorry about what?" I demanded. "It's gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "The building, the whole building, the South Tower. It's gone. It collapsed." "It can't be gone. It can't. You're wrong." "We have to move away. Come on, let me get you to an ambulance. You have to be treated." "I have to find my dad," I screamed. "There's nothing that we can do, son. We just have to—" "Leave me alone," I yelled, and I tried to break away from his grip on my arm. "I've got to find my dad." He held me tight, and I thrashed around, breaking his hold. He tried to grab me again, and I stumbled away forward in the direction that I thought I was moving toward the building. I got no more than a half a dozen steps when I crashed over top of something and flew forward, landing painfully on my hands and knees. A firm hand grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me to my feet. It was the same officer again. "You have to come with me. There's no choice." "But I can see it. I can see the building," I said, pointing through the dark cloud. A dark shadow could have been seen through the cloud. It was the tower, but it looked different. The shape was all wrong. I strained my eyes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It had a jagged outline. Oh my God, it wasn't the tower. It was the remains of a tower, a twisted tangle of metal and concrete that had collapsed, throwing rubble across the plaza. The building was gone. My dad was gone. My knees felt like rubber, and if that hadn't been for the officer's hand holding me up, I might have fallen again. Then I had the strangest thought, that nursery rhyme from history class. We all fall down. We all fall down. The words echoed in my head. "Come on, son, we have to get moving further away. It's just not safe here." He started to lead me away. I was powerless to stop him. But why would I even try? I looked back over my shoulder. I could make out the images of people stumbling around in the thick white cloud. They were lost, confused, unsure where to go, probably hurt. Hurt or injured, definitely stunned, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed, what they had just been a part of. I suddenly dug in my heels and stopped. "We have to keep moving," the officer said. "It just isn't safe here." "No." I reached down. Still around my neck was the string holding the whistle. I put it to my lips, and I began to blow. It made a shrill call that sounded so loud in my ears, but was absorbed and silenced by the dust and sound all around me. I kept on blowing anyways, expelling every last bit of air that I had in my lungs into the whistle. "He told me he'd come if I just blew this whistle. He promised, he promised." I began coughing. The dust replaced the air. "He said that he'd come if I whistled," I cried. I desperately tried to explain to the officer. "He said he'd come." The policeman placed an arm around my shoulders. "He can't hear you, son. We have to go. We have to. Your dad would have wanted you to be safe." I felt my whole body get weak. My dad would have wanted me to. I saw a figure slowly moving forward, too tall to be real. No, not one figure, two. One person carrying another. I broke away from the officer. My movement was so sudden and unexpected that he couldn't stop me. I ran, closing the gap, hoping, praying, hearing the officer screaming for me to come back, but I just kept on running, and then I skidded to a stop. It was my father, although I didn't recognize him. He was covered with a thick layer of white dust, and his clothes were practically shredded and hanging from his body. There was blood streaming down his forehead. Ting still clinging tightly to his back, her black eyes staring out in shock and surprise. "Will!" I threw my arms around him. "You're okay. I'm okay. I thought you were dead." I burst into tears. "It's all right, Will. I'm alive. We're all alive. I heard the whistle." I hugged him with all my might, and then an arm wrapped around me, and I looked up and realized it was Ting's arms around my shoulders. We had just left the building, and we were picked up and thrown like rag dolls by the rush of air. The building just collapsed and shot us out of the way. I was slammed into the ground, and when I was able to get air back into my lungs, I realized that Ting was still on my back. I scrambled away with her still there. "Come on, all of you, we have to leave. We can't stay here," the police officer shouted. "This is my dad. We can go now." And that's the end of the story.